Hi YouTube, me again. I, in the last video, forged some canister Damascus, one of which turned out what I hope is going to be really, really cool. So in this video, I'm going to forge it into a knife. Let's go.
Alright guys, thanks for joining me on this journey. I'm going to go ahead and light up the forge. You know the drill. And here's what our billet looks like. So I cut a notch off of one corner, so that tells me which side has the pattern on it. And this is upsetting. Literally, this is what it's called. So you forge it on the ends to try and widen out the bar a little bit. If you saw the last video, you know I over-forged this a little bit, and so it got pretty thin. This is going to have an integral bolster on the knife that I'm forging, so I need that to be plenty thick. Now I am fullering out the width. So if I was to just kind of draw this bar out, it would end up being long and skinny, so I have to get the width that I want for the knife before I forge it out. So here I'm kind of doing both at the same time, getting the width that I need, and then forging in the tip a little bit to make that easier to forge later on. And just kind of continuing to push that out a little bit until I get the width that I need and move on to the hammer. I thought my camera was recording, but apparently it wasn't. When I took what you kind of saw there, it has like kind of a spear shape. Well, then I just kind of take it to the anvil and whack that over to the side, so then all of the mass is on one side, creating the spine and the heel of the knife. Now I'm drawing that heel down. Honestly, I'm a little rusty in this video because I hadn't forged this style of knife in quite a while, so it honestly looks like crap. I'm my own worst critic, so when I go back and I look at these videos, I just think of, man, how inefficient are you? Like, this is just terrible. But this is the basic forging process where you're just trying to get that heel down, so you've got, you need to have the heel close to the bolster. Just aesthetically, and when you're using the knife, you need the heel to be kind of in front of your fingers as much as possible. So here I'm just refining the shape using the cross of the cross peen to push that metal out. You see I'm hitting it along the perpendicular to the length of the blade to try and push that steel in both directions, but the way that I'm swinging the hammer generally tends to run that steel kind of up in little ripples, pushing that towards the heel. And then as you saw, I just clipped off the tip of the knife there. The reason for that is because when I was forging the initial tip, I got a little bit of a fish lip shape going on there, and so I keep one corner of my anvil sharp so that I can just make quick adjustments like that. Just cut the tip off real quick by slamming it on a corner. Now this is even more upsetting. So there's actually a little bit more width that I need, and also I have to match the curvature and the height of the antler that I'm going to be using for the handle. So I have to make sure that this thing is the right size shape so that when I grind it down, it matches the antler handle that I'm going to be using. So a little bit of upsetting, and then tuning that shape back into a square so that I can keep everything nice and aligned. In the end, it's going to be a rounded bolster, but I like the square because it helps me keep everything straight and tidy. This is the antler that I'm going to be using. I'm just tracing the shape onto the anvil just for size reference, and also for the shape of the tang, because here I'm going to use these butcher dies to isolate where that tang is going to go. I made these butcher dies a while ago, and they work really, really well for not smushing the rest of the bolster as I draw that tang out. If I had done that with the flat dies, it kind of would have all just smushed, and I would have had to grind a bunch of the bolster off to make it flat again for that transition into the handle. Now I'm just drawing that tang out a little bit more. Again, keeping everything square for now so that it's nice and easy to line up. And now I have to actually curve the tang because it has to go through that curved antler. So just working on getting that shape and then utilizing my template of the antler, making sure that everything is the shape that it needs to be so that when I go to grind everything and make it all fit later on, I've got everything where it needs to be. Last minute tweaks and straightening are always kind of the last step in my forging, just to make sure that everything's as straight as it possibly can be before I move on. As you can see here, the tang's not actually perfect. I did actually have to tweak the tang a little bit more later on in the process. Some of that's going to get ground off, as you're about to see here, but for the most part, the shape of the tang needed to be a little bit more curved, and so I had to make those adjustments later on. Here I'm just grinding the basic profile. As you saw, I mean, it's forged to shape, but it's not my best forging, so there was quite a lot of grinding that had to go into this to just kind of clean everything up. And I'm just trying to get the basic shape so that I can work on the handle and the fittings before I move on to heat treat. So everything just kind of needs to be cleaned up so that I can do all that work and have everything fit up properly later on. You can see me there grinding the tang, making it a little bit more curved, making sure that everything fits, making sure that the sides of the bolsters are aligned with the blade perfectly so that when I straighten everything out, everything's all aligned later on. Quick dip and a test etch. This pattern came out pretty cool. Lots of possibilities for this thing in the future. So as you can see, we got some lines there. They're all kind of squiggly and kind of, I mean, it's weird. It's not like what you would get with regular layered steel. So I am excited to try some more variations of this in the future. Getting my handy-dandy file guide set up there, and then spending quite a lot of time with the file, just making sure this thing is absolutely perfect so that it'll mate up to the flat transition into the antler handle. This is my WIP attachment from AmeriBraid. It is an awesome tool. A thing to use is you can use it as like a waterfall platen, use it for doing integrals like this. It's great. All right, drilling out the antler. So I had to drill a curved hole here. So I'm just drilling from both ends and just aligning the drill bit with the outside of it so that I get a nice 2 straight holes, but at slightly different angles so that they meet up in the middle with a pilot bit, and then using a larger bit that is going to fit the tang in it. And there is our curved hole. It worked out pretty well. Now back to the drill. I like to use a countersink to just chamfer the edge a little bit there. When you flatten out that the bolster transition, there's still a little bit around the tang that is going to stick up. It will keep you from getting a perfect fit. So just using that countersink eliminates all those problems, and it fits up nice and flat. Now it's time to move on to some of the fittings. So this is going to be a through tank construction, so I need to make a ferrule and a butt cap for this thing. So this is just a scrap bolt that I had laying around. I'm milling a couple of bolt holes in here, and you'll see what those are for later on. Now, this is, I don't have a lathe, okay? So Dennis Terrell told me that I should just buy a lathe bit and chuck it up in my vise on my mill and use it as a lathe. So that's exactly what I did. And this is me necking that down for the pommel. That's the part that's going to go through the butt cap, and then it'll have female threads on the inside to thread onto the tang. I was actually pretty happy with how this setup worked out. It's definitely not clean, and there's definitely some run out, but honestly, for what I had, I mean, it worked pretty well. This is me freehanding the ferrule. So this is the part that's going to be exposed, and I wanted to give it just kind of like a little bit of shape. And so with the 2 wheels on the mill table, I just kind of had fun with it, and it actually worked out really well first try, and I'm not mad about how it ended up looking. As you can see, it's very rough, so I need to clean this up on the grinder, and then of course later on I'll keep it chucked up in the drill and just use some hand sanding paper to make sure that it's perfectly clean. Now that is what I'm working on right now. So this is me tapping the threads. I absolutely love this gear wrench set that I got from Amazon. If you're interested in it, you can check the link in the description to my Amazon store. I just love the ratcheting handle on this thing versus some of the cheaper sets that you can get with, just trying to get the dies and the taps set up in them. It's so much easier with this kit. I love it. And there we go. Everything threads together. Now it's time to work on our butt cap. So first and foremost, got to drill a hole in that thing for the ferrule to fit through. And they'll show you kind of what this looks like. Just doing a kind of a dry fit up here to make sure that everything fits together and is nice and flat. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace a line around where the antler meets that butt cap and roughly shape it out here on the grinder. Now, for the construction that I'm doing, I really need to locate this butt cap onto the antler so that it goes on and off perfectly every time. So I'm going to use some locating pins. I've never done this before, but it worked really well. So just tapping my marks in there and then drilling some very small holes, tapping the locating pins in there, and then that way when I tighten it onto the antler, it pushes some indentations in there, and I can drill the corresponding holes in the antler side. And that is going to allow me to do this technique, which I've seen done before but never tried myself. I'm using a carbide burr to transfer the texture, kind of continue the texture of the antler onto the butt cap. And I was really happy with the way that it came out. Like I said, I've never tried it before, and I've always loved the look. So the fact that that it came out as cool as it was, I was very happy with. I was planning on hand sanding it, but I kind of liked the way that the carbide burr left some more texture in there, so I called it good. Now it's time to start on our heat treatment. So I'm coating the blade in Condor-Sol, and this just helps to prevent oxidization. You don't want any decarb on the finished blade. Sometimes when you'll go to etch something, you'll see some light spots. That's generally decarb, where some of the carbon is leached out of the blade. That Condor-Sol just kind of helps keep that from happening. I'm going to cycle this thing 3 times in descending temperatures, and that's going to help relax the steel and tighten up the grain. Each time it goes in, it just gets pulled out to air cool, and sometimes it looks really cool, especially with the lights off. So I just kind of like that look. Now it's time to quench the blade, so I'm heating up my oil. Kind of counterintuitive, but cold oil does not quench blades very well. You need the viscosity of the oil to be correct. So this thing goes back in the oven one more time, get it up to austenizing temperature, and then quenched in the oil. So now we have a hard blade. Unfortunately, that hard blade is now very brittle. So it goes back in the oven at 350 degrees for 2 hours, gets pulled out, gets cooled down, and then back in the oven for another 2 hours. And now we have a knife. So now, post-heat treat, I can start making the bolster and everything else the shape that it's going to be in the finalized knife. I normally do faceted bolsters, but for this I'm going to make it round to match the antler. But I started with some facets just to make sure that everything was lined up properly. Right around this time, I started seeing a scratch in the top of the blade, and I was kind of suspicious that it might actually not be a scratch. It might be a crack. That's not a great feeling. So, unfortunately, yeah, it cracked somewhere in the process. The grain looks great, but there's a little dark spot on the top that indicates a crack. So, now that I've completely started over and made a new knife, we're going to scribe where we want the bolster to meet up to the handle, and then grind the octagonal shape smooth. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to make a whole new canister, so I just picked up some scrap Damascus, not scrap Damascus, some, Damascus that was from an unfinished project that I had laying around the shop, and forged another knife just so that I could get the video done. I could have ended the video with the cracked blade, but I mean, I put so much work into the handle and the ferrule and the butt cap, and I thought it was going to look really cool, so I just forged out some other Damascus, and here we go. So I'm going to do a slight museum fit up on this, and you can see there's some spots where the antler is underneath the bolster. And so what I need to do is mark those spots and then grind those down so that everything is nice and even all the way around. Now it is time for hand sanding. Luckily, I have this tool from KH Daily. It's a stone holder that fits into a reciprocating saw, and it makes getting the initial scratches out so much faster. It leaves a pretty rough finish depending on what stones you're using. I'm starting with a 180 stone, and then I'll go back over it with 220 sandpaper after I'm done. But all I have to do is smooth everything out. All of the horizontal scratches are completely gone, and so it makes the whole hand sanding process a lot easier. This is probably a good time for our obligatory fun fact, provided by my son, Ben. Did you know that emperor penguin colonies can be so massive that they can be seen from space? Think of it like a medium-sized city around you, 8 square miles. That's how big they are. Now what I need to do is I need to smooth out all the bits that I had to grind off of the antler to make it, more symmetrical. It's never going to be symmetrical, it's antler. But going back over and just kind of smoothing out that stuff so that it's all nice and even. And comfortable, of course. And then once that's done, I can go ahead and start hand sanding the bolster. I wanted to get this done with everything all attached so that any scratches that were induced into the bolster were then hand sanded out after the fact. And that just way it makes sure you can feel it in your hand. You want to feel the whole thing all at once instead of doing it separately. And now I'm hand sanding the bolster and the spine, getting that all up to a 600 grit finish. I like 600 grit finish. It's a good grit to etch at, I guess. I don't know. 600 is great. I know a lot of people go way higher, but I think it looks pretty good at 600. I like a good satin finish, and I usually get pretty good results etching at that that sandpaper grit. Another tip I picked up from Dennis Terrell was to get the blade wet before going into the acid. It really helps get a consistent etch. I'm not really sure why, but it's always worked really, really well for me. So into the Gator Piss Original Etching it goes. This stuff is made by Baker Forge. It's a one-step etchant. It's great stuff. I etch all my blades in Gator Piss of one variety and another. They have the Max and the Heavy. It's good stuff. So now all the stuff that I ground off to make the antler more symmetrical, I'm going to use this leather dye to try and make everything match up a little bit. Gives it a little bit of an antiquing look and make it all look more uniform. Now I'm taking some brass black to the ferrule. This is just some mild steel, so it takes this brass black really, really well, just to make kind of everything all match together. I don't want a bright silver ferrule sticking out the end of a black and silver knife. Neutralizing all the acid off the blade, and we get a look at our pattern. It's just some lazy twist Damascus with some alternating layers, and I think it came out pretty cool. So I also etched the butt cap, which is wrought iron, so you can see kind of the lines from that. I really love the way wrought iron looks, so I thought that would add a cool dynamic to the build. We'll just throw that garbage out of the way and do a dry fit up and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. Normally I would bed this tang with this kind of a thing just to make sure that everything lines up really well, but actually the curvature of the antler made it to where it really locked into place every single time when I put the knife together dry. So I was able to get everything lined up perfectly with just a hole for the tang. And now a glue up. Everything has to be perfectly degreased with acetone, and then filling up everything with epoxy. Yes, technically everything is threaded together, so I could have made this some sort of takedown, but there's really no point with the type of knife that I was making, so I went ahead and made sure that everything was firmly secured with epoxy, and it turned out just fine. I love doing the through-tang method with the threaded fasteners. No clamps involved. It just threads right up, and it's good to go. So here is how it turned out.
Well, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate you going on this saga with me. There was a little bit of heartbreak, a little bit of triumph, a lot in between. So I have to admit, there was probably 2 weeks between the clip that you saw of the knife breaking and then me having a new knife, because I had to just walk away from it for a little bit. And that's kind of the way knife making is. Some mistakes can't be avoided. You can do everything right and stuff still happens. So I think it's like that with a lot of things in life, and you just kind of have to learn how to problem solve and figure out how to keep going. So it is definitely a case of journey before destination. Knife making is no different than many other aspects of life. So I wanted to be true to that and showcase exactly what went into everything, and hopefully you got to see a little bit of what real knife making looks like, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, unfortunately. That being said, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for my next video. I have a couple of ideas. Maybe some faster videos, maybe something a little bit shorter, some quicker projects, something like that. That one took a long time. But in the meantime, I do have knives available on my website. Knives like this. Not so much the one in the video. That one is donated to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for one of their banquet auctions. So that's going to be going up for auction here in the next couple of days. So I'm really proud to have something like that at a cool banquet like that. So anyways, still plenty of other knives on my website, so go check those out. I really appreciate it. Follow me on my social medias, and if you would like, subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. Until next time, guys, have a good one.